I'm going to read to you guys a email that I received not too long ago, and I think it really captures the heart of so many people dealing with something like this. It says, 2 years ago, I started a young adult group at our church with 5 people, and 6 months later, it grew to over 20. But 6 months after that, it went back down to about 7. This past year, I've experienced the same trend as the first year. I just can't seem to gain much momentum, or when I do, it quickly fades. Is this normal? And I think we could agree that that happens quite a bit. Yep. And then he asked, do you have any advice on how I can keep momentum going? Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
I know this is our story. I could have wrote that to you, and it would be us. That at our church, we have gone up and down and up and down, and hit mid-30s, hit 6, and you're like, what's going on? How can this even be?
Yeah.
And so a few things that we have found very important are Sunday morning covers row or pew service sort of a setting, but it's got to be relational. And whether it actually is that it's around tables or it's at a home, or whether it's just that we really focus on relationships.
So you say it's got to be relational.
Relational.
In what way exactly?
That people are talking to each other, that's almost made to happen. Because I think when you have rows or pews, a lot of time in a service only, a lot of times people come in, they sit down, they don't talk to anybody, they get up and they leave.
So how exactly do you create a culture where that can take place?
For us, there's a lot of discussion. We're going to have questions. We're going to have times where we just sit around and say, what are your thoughts on the gifts of the Spirit? Or what is your gift that maybe you see the most in your life? Sure. Where they have to really think about it. And we don't make everyone speak, because that might not be good. But we make it feel like everyone is speaking, and where everyone definitely could speak if they would feel free to do that. And I think relationship is the most important thing. I would say for each one of us at this table, that's what the most important thing in our lives is to be relational and to have people that are pouring into us. And that's what I, as a young adult pastor, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, sure. I think it's something that you can get frustrated with at first. And we've been doing this for about 5 years now, and you could say, man, it seems like every 6 months, it seems like we see a dip in our attendance, and we could wonder if we need to reinvent the wheel, what we're doing. I learned from someone a while back, well, check your seasons, follow your seasons, track them. Well, it seems like every May we have this huge influx of people, or in September we have this dip, or whatever the case is. Is it more of a seasonal thing that you have college students coming and going at that time, and it just happens to be a part of a season, a cycle in the year, and it's not meant to be as discouraging? So we've seen some of those things happen in some of the earlier years. We would see huge growth trends in the summer. Then a couple years later, we saw dips in the summer. And so we would adapt our services, we would adapt the kind of events we're doing so that they would be more flexible to the natural life cycle of the ministry. I think we can get in trouble and cause a little instability if you start to panic sometime if you see that, and it's more of a seasonal than it is just an issue with the ministry itself.
So when you're in a season where the attendance has maybe dropped a lot, do you still keep the group going? How does it change from when there's a lot of people coming maybe to now not so many?
I think that the feel of it can change. So what Chris was talking about is community, is relationships. I know this last December we started to see that dip. You always see it, seems like in December, kind of as we wind down the year, the attendance starts to wane. So this last year we did something called the Unplugged Sessions that we've been talking about for a while. It went very acoustic. We changed up the feel of the stage. We changed it up and tried to just make a more tight-knit, intimate environment for the service. And then we saw really great feedback because it just seemed like it was connecting with those that were coming. And then whenever we picked back up again, the numbers did go up, and they did go back. We found it just in our area, in our unique culture and context, to be a bit more of just the dynamics of this community and of this area, how the attendance kind of goes up and down during the year.
Have you guys ever got to the point that you think, hey, maybe we need to squash this for a while and maybe just stop our young adult group and maybe see what happens 2 months from now?
Yeah, definitely. I know with us, we've probably in 7 years twice we've taken off maybe a 3-month period and told them we're going to take 3 months off, and then or some time frame, and when we get back at it, we're going to see what God has for us and how it's going to look. It'll be a little different, but this is going to be coming back. And they knew we weren't going away forever, but they also knew, and they could sense something needed to change. And the easiest way, maybe the best way for us in those 2 periods were we just need to take a break and let it start fresh, where we could really see what God had for us.
Okay, so you basically determined that it was going to be good to change from the feel that you were getting from the people in your group.
Yeah, to me, I mean, every time we've done that, it's been very obvious where all of a sudden it feels like work to come instead of fun.
That's right.
And if it's work for me, that's not good. But if it's work for, the young people or students or young couples, if they're like, oh man, I have to come out again, something's got to change. And sometimes we've been able to change while that has happened to get away from that. Other times we've been like, okay, we just have to break this and start it fresh. And every time that it has, even like you mentioned, changing up a little bit, has been a very big blessing for us, and I believe for everyone in the group, to really realize we really want this. Yep. We're willing to sacrifice a little, but also maybe personalities change or some dynamics change, or we figure out what we need to do, and God maybe can speak to us sometimes during those breaks and really bless it.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've seen coming out of this last December. We hit a little over the 4-year mark for the ministry, and going into that ministry, I was just beginning my senior year in college, and so I'm coming at it from a completely different perspective. The way we started the ministries, the questions we were asking, the goals we had, the things we were doing, and I'm thinking we are now into this ministry, and we are still living off of the kind of vision, the initial vision from 4 years ago. And I'll tell you what, if you just go through the Bible, and this will probably be a great way for us to start talking about vision too, because I think that's really important in our conversation, is if we're just living off of yesterday's vision or last year's vision, think about the Bible. If Nehemiah is thinking, of the vision, years before of the wall or years after, hey, how am I going to build this wall? God's moving us to a new place. God's moving us to a different direction. And so we took off that a whole month, about maybe 6 weeks. And from there, we were able to rebuild, ask some brand new questions, redefine the target. Where are we aiming? What are the things we need to really focus on this new year? Yeah. What are some of the things we thought were strengths that are really weaknesses? How are we going to be intentional about building new bridges to foster community within the ministry? Sure. And saw great success with that this upcoming year here as we've started it.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a transient culture, and things are always changing, especially from a college student to a young adult, and they, now they have a career, and then they're dating, they get married, and things are always changing in their life. How important is it in a ministry to young adults to have a consistent vision, and for that to maybe change up a little bit as well, to kind of adapt to the surroundings of the group?
Sure. I think vision is a huge issue. I think it's something that ministry and leadership, it rises and it falls on vision. As Jim Collins, I believe he talks about it. As Jim Collins says in Good to Great, you got to have the right people on the bus. And vision, I would say, tells you where the bus is going. And so what we do is we try to get a lot of people together, but if there isn't a vision, then they're kind of like, why are we here and where are we going? And vision tells them a destination. It tells them the preferred future. It tells them this is what this can look like. If the Lord showed up, if we could see him do something impossible, we can do it. And sometimes vision scares us. It scares leaders. It can scare people because it needs to be big enough for people to grab a hold of. It needs to be big enough for people to jump on board with. If you have vision that's as small as a convertible, how are you going to fit this group of young adults in there? Are there seats for them? Are there places for them to grab onto and actually say we're heading somewhere together? Yeah. And I think that it kind of rises and falls on vision that's big enough to get them involved and be a part of.
So if you guys were to summarize real quick the vision of your young adult group, what would that be?
I know for me and for our group, we want every young adult to experience God in a way that they're probably not going to get there on their own. So when we come together, it's all God moving, and he told us to go heal the sick and to pray for everyone and to build disciples, make disciples. Yeah. And so that means I think we should expect people to be healed, saved, delivered, set free. And that's what our young adult group is all about. That when we're together, it's about getting ourselves closer to God and experiencing greater things so that when we leave our front doors, God's going to move at work, at school, when we're playing basketball, whatever's going on, someone sprains an ankle. We need to be praying for people when they sprain their ankle and then get them iced if it doesn't work. But I expect it to work.
Sign me up to your young adult group. I want to come on. I'm excited about the vision.
That's it, man.
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
I think for us, it's the whole thing is built around John 4. It's called The Well and built around that vision. That it's a place to find something deeper. It's a place to never thirst again. It's a place where you can meet Jesus and he can reveal to you things you never even knew that you knew about yourself or thought you knew about yourself. And so that's part of it. And then part of the vision is really just to be a regional resource to the young adults in the Northeast and in and around our area, so that we can connect with those ministries and allow them to come, just as you would show up to a well, to receive something that you could take back with you that can be nourishment to your family and to your community. And so that's kind of the vision that we're embracing right now.
That's great. So it sounds like, I mean, if you want to really build and sustain momentum in a young adult group, it's important to, as you were saying, Chris, to really develop a culture of relationship. That it's not just about a program, it's not just about a service, but it's about truly, authentically connecting with people, knowing that they are there for you. And also just have a vision that is powerful, that is hot, that young adults want to get a hold of. It's awesome.